Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of the Modernist Guide, Metal Mayhem, Part 4, and we are getting even deeper, a little weird. These are more eclectic and esoteric albums that I super duper like for the most part. There's not really a bad one in the bunch this time. And also, they're either like super not well known, and I discovered from all the digging that I like to do, or they got a lot of detractors. So, I'm going to love them. You might hate them. That's totally fine. But let's get started. First, we have Scar of the Sun, probably the least well known on here, as far as I could tell, with Inertia. This is like their third record. They are kind of a traditional style prog band, but with a lot of like gothic and melodic death metal influences. I think they're a throwback while still sounding very modern. They remind me of a lot of 2000s bands, or at least in their heyday in the 2000s, like In Flames and Scar Symmetry and Paradise Lost. Also a little bit of Amorphous and Machine Head. This record is mostly about the lyrics and the guitar, I believe. It's very forward thinking in how it sounds, even though it harks back to 20 years ago in the underground scene where the internet was just kind of bringing up those bands to the forefront to other people who were deep into the metal community. And this is one of those where it's like, I like everything about this record, no matter how old hat or not super revolutionary they sound. And also, that album cover is just dope to me. I love that album cover, and that made me check them out the first time I heard them, the record before this. But yeah, I'm going to give this one a 7.5. It's very enjoyable to me, but there's other more complex records out there or more overfilling records, but I think the songs I like are really worth checking out. So you should look into I Am the Circle, Quantum Leap 01, Quantum Leap 03, Singularity Collapse, and Zenith to Minos. Next is another big metalcore band trying intricate and progressive electronica into their sound. They're really growing and blowing up. They're catching a lot of steam. Silent Planet with their third record, Iridescent. I've talked about bands like Era and Architects, but no matter what, those kind of bands where they seem a little more spaced out and focused and doing the traditional thing, something about Silent Planet feels a little special. And though it's still the same kind of like hardcore scream vocals and clean soaring choruses as most good metalcore is, this seems super clear and focused, and there's just something about the level of clarity in the production where you can hear every little sound. I think it's just really well made. The screams are really good hardcore punk screams instead of the typical more leaning to like death metal screams that a lot of bands do. The name Silent Planet really works because I think there's this inescapable density and all-consuming feeling on like every single song. The way it builds and builds and builds and crescendos. There's just something about when you hear it, it's very unique and distinguishable from all their peers. I think Era's the closest, but something about them feels completely different while still covering all the bases. Like on paper they look the exact same, but they approach it completely different, and I love this way that they do it a little bit more. I think it's highly emotional and highly volatile while still being so controlled and focused. Like they really know what they're screaming and crashing about. So it's a solid 8. Check out Trilogy, Second Son, Panopticon, definitely The Sound of Sleep. Until We Have Faces is just, it's so good. Definitely, like, that might be the top one, even though Sleep is really good too. Up next is the real weird one, is Danny Elfman. And if that name sounds familiar to you, he's scored pretty much every single Tim Burton film. And before he was a composer, something I didn't know until looking into him, he was also a member of fucking Oingo Boingo, which I'm sure a lot of people recognize that for different reasons at this point in 2021. But yeah, so that was a very weird but fun new wave band in the 80s. And here he just felt like making a record. It's called Big Mess because he's super self-aware, and I love it. It's very experimental and weird and wacky, but it's very dense. It's got a good electronic alternative metal feel, very industrial and progressive. It's a vocally with him singing, it's a mix of delivery between like Lou Reed and 80s David Bowie. Like this record is all over the place, and some songs I guess if you can call them that, do sound like they're part of film scores or themes to like TV shows that were never made. It's wild and fun. This is the kind of shit I look for in metal when I want something experimental or weird. I love straightforward, extreme stuff as much as anybody else in hardcore, you know, but I love the wacky, what the fuck is this shit? And it might not get any more than that with Danny. Check out Everybody Loves You and Dance with the Lemurs. Serious Ground, Happy, The Devil Take Away, Bitter Times, and Get Over It. And that's like 7 songs, but the whole record's like 18. And so it's a wild ride. I dig it. It's a 7.5 because like a lot of it you can say like I don't want to listen to this again, but I'm super down. I'm super into it, and I hope I find something like this at least every year, because this is my happy space, is just finding shit like this. Next, there's Cradle of Filth, and I don't really know what to say. This one's called Existence is Futile. This is like their 40th, 100th record. They've been around for a good long time. They're technically considered symphonic black metal, but the black metal has gotten less and less. Sometimes he has those squeals and shrieks and screams that are common in black metal, but it's way more like gothic storytelling with this big, over-the-top stage play-esque singing and musicianship. There's not a lot to say here. I kind of picked this because they are pretty popular, and I was like, just, you know, talk about some of the wacky popular stuff. Well, some people call them the Nickelback of symphonic black metal because, like, they are really popular, but a lot of people hate them. And honestly, I like their stage presence. I like how they convey a lot of things, though there is a little bit too much of this style that I'm not super into. It's a little gaudy and like, you know, sexy fuck vampire kind of shit, kind of stuff, or like, you know, ooh, gore and blood is hot kind of shit. And that gets really aggravating after a while for me, and it's not enough to be parody, and even if it was, I probably wouldn't be down for it. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I think it is one of their more over the top and enjoyable all around records, though, because sometimes they just like lose me, even though they haven't super duper changed in the last like 15 or so years. Necromantic Fantasies, yep, see my point, is the song to check out, along with Crawling King Chaos, which is probably the catchiest, Discourse Between a Man and His Soul, and Us Dark Invincible. Okay, it's time for a super biased hard sell record. This is Four Stroke Baron Classics. This is like their 3rd record, I think. Four Stroke Baron is weird, but not in the like kooky, zany, over the top way. It's I don't even know where to begin really, except it's like Tears for Fears, but metal and more drawn out. The vocals are spacious and deep. It sounds like someone singing in a warehouse in a cavern in space. It's super echoey, and I love it, but it is grindy, crunchy, ethereal, hard, heavy, dense prog metal done through like 80s new wave production, and it's dark. And the best way I can describe it is like if Gary Newman was dissecting the shit out of Tears for Fears and making a Frankenstein monster to play metal backing for him or something. I don't know. I love this stuff though. Should go check out the singer. His picture on Spotify, he just looks like 50, 80 years from now, some kind of like cyberpunk drug dealer, or, you know, like House Harkonnen shit from Dune. Like the way this music sounds to me, as catchy and addicting as it is for me, this sounds like what H.R. Giger's artwork looks to me. I know other people would probably think dirtier or messier, but for me it's more of that just like sleek, spooky, liquidated, organic cyber shit. I like a lot of songs on this record. It's an 8.5 because I'm trying to be a little balanced. It's maybe a lot. It's maybe more like a 9 personally, but I'm trying to be reasonable. Check out Kara, Prostitute Party 2. It's better than that sounds. 13 Steps to Stockton is the closest to like noise that I like, or noise rock, but it's in a completely different way than I've heard. Most noise stuff is like dusty and dirty and stripped back and raw. This is not. This is like a bunch of, this is like the musical equivalent of the Digimon meme, you know, take something normal, add a fuck ton of shit to it. I like Go, but it kind of has a sort of song within a song thing, and that might like throw a lot of people off, and it's like 8 minutes. Friday night, Coast of Barbary. But definitely check out Sundowner. Check out Sundowner first. I really want people to understand just how fucking weird this band is. But where I discovered them, they did an EP of cover songs. And the songs include Red Rider, which is like a one-hit wonder 80s rock band. Churches, The Beatles, you'll never guess which one he covers. Death Grips, and Post Malone. So they want to try to be fucking weird while still having perfect sound that's super unique. I highly recommend just checking it out, even if you hate it. All right, so this is the big one where all of the goodwill goes out the door. Super biased. Between the Buried in Me, Colors 2. For people unaware and uninitiated, Between the Buried in Me is a prog metal band, but the way I always try to sum it up, people, is if Dream Theater, Yes, and Queen had a very screamy metal baby, and it's so good. A lot of their songs can go anywhere between 5-6 minutes to 15. They are kind of all over the place. They will be very straightforward 1 minute and then add a completely new instrument to shift things the next. This one, Colors 2, is a sequel to what's considered their masterpiece. It's the first record I heard by them. I love them much. They described it as adult contemporary death metal. So like that record and this one, there's a lot of like spaced out jazz lounge stuff in between segments of more hardcore and visceral stuff. They've added more like post-hardcore and more traditional metalcore stuff in this one. They've added a lot of 80s production. There's one whole song that is just a more metal and extreme tribute to all the tropes of new wave, but it's just a big fat menacing concept album. I will recommend to anybody, even if they hate all the things I just listed, because maybe something will surprise you. The vocals are not everybody's cup of tea. I like the death screams because I call them atrocious vocals because they sound like this big menacing tar monster. And then in complete contrast, think of like the clean vocals are very like Genesis and Yes and a bit of Queen and Beatles sometimes, and I love that contrast so much. But check out the double helix of Extinction, Revolution in Limbo, Fix the Era, Never Seen Future Shock, The Future is Behind Us, and Human as Hell. So this is a 9.5, like without a doubt for me. It's gonna be a top record of the year. So here's a hard one to decide. This is Rivers of Nihil with, I think, their fourth record, The Work, and their previous record, Where Owls Know My Name, was one of my favorite records of, I think it was 2018, and it really blew me away. And there's a lot more experimental stuff on that record than this one. This one's a little more straightforward with a few things that they used on that record they're bringing back here. A little bit of saxophone here and there. A lot more melodic than they used to be. And honestly, for the most part, this is just like Opeth with a lot of stylings and sensibilities of Pink Floyd, especially the guitar. They take their time, and I don't hate it, but I'm missing something. I've heard it at least 6 times now. I can't super get into it. I like a lot of what it does, and I think it's very comprehensive, but it's missing something, and maybe I over expected something from them. I was really expecting another thing, but they've changed their sound again to a more accessible but really approachable sound, and I'm into it. Again, like if you can handle death screams but with Pink Floyd, then check this out for sure. But for me, ultimately, there's just so much other stuff. I'm gonna give it a 7.25 for, doing it well, just not as interesting as I wished. But check out Focus, Clean, and The Void Which No Sound Escapes. Next we have Khemmis with Deceiver. This is their 4th record, and these guys are kind of traditional doom metal and stoner metal with really good clean vocals that you can hear every word, because they are what I like to call epic storytelling metal. It's very slow, drawn out. It's only 8 songs. Every song is like 5 to 9 minutes, and it's all just telling this fantastical deep story. Think like if there was a band all about telling the story of The Witcher or something. that's kind of what this is. It's very enthralling. It's super enjoyable, you know. I hate to sound like a commercial, but I guess, if you're playing like Dark Souls for the millionth time and you want something new to listen to while doing it, I don't know. Something like that. That's just a feeling I get from it, where it is a very chill, vibey record. They're telling a story to you. It's like an audiobook with Black Sabbath and Candlemass kind of music in the background. It's just highly, highly enjoyable. It doesn't wow me. I can put it on, but I can also maybe forget the record exists because how much shit I listen to. But I'm going to give it a 7.75. Check out Avernal Gate, Living Pyre, and Obsidian Crown. But the last song, Astral Road, is probably an opus. I just am not super committed to it yet. I've only heard the record 3 times. It's come out pretty recently, so it might all grow on me, but it's worth mentioning. It's worth rating relatively high like I have it, I think. All right, finally, last but not least, and this is kind of super important record for everybody involved in it. It is Cynic Ascension Codes. So Cynic has been around for almost 35 years, and they helped create progressive death metal. They were there near the beginning in the early 90s, but through so much stuff, you'd have to read into it. They've only done 4 records. This is their 4th record. They had a compilation demo thing that came out as well. Some people call it their secret 5th record, I guess, now at this point. But the big deal is founding member and drummer Sean Reinhardt died in 2020, like early. I can't find a cause for it. It was January, so maybe it was COVID, maybe it wasn't. They won't tell us. But then the bassist, Sean Malone, killed himself in December 2020. So this is a record, I think it's probably their last, and it's a very good send off, I think. It's very goodbye-esque. These guys have constantly changed their sound, trying to find new stuff. They did kind of a super progressive emo poppy record in 2014 compared to the wildly complex and jazz fusion death metal of their first record in 93. And here they do some callbacks there. It's not nearly as visceral or anything like that, but just some of the tones reminds me of that record, Focus. And then there's still some of the more poppy stuff. But also it's like 18 songs, but like 8 of them are just little snippets. It just feels like a send off. It feels like an epilogue or a funeral of sorts. And it's a very emotional record, and I can feel it even without really being super attached to the band members that are no longer here. I think fans of like King Crimson would really like this. Just soft, airy parts all over, and the vocals as well. It's just a dreamy, cathartic, spacey record with a lot of jazz improvisation, I think. It's a solid 8. I recommend Elements and Their Inhabitants, Mythical Serpents, Aurora, In the Multiverse Where Atoms Sing, and the last song, Diamond Light Body, which the way it ends is like... So yeah, I... It's just one of those things where it's like this is only their 4th record and you can just feel something ending. And that's it this time. Thank you so much. Hope you found something that you weren't expecting. Like always, like, share, subscribe if you want. If not, just thank you for listening. Have a great night.